Hello and welcome. I'm Lanre Lasese. It's nice to have you again on the program as we review the activities at the National Conference. Now, there are many words that can help describe how the conference fared during the week, but I'm going to leave that to you to assess for yourselves after you watch a summary of the events of the week. Also, I had a chat with a delegate on the conference and some of the issues that are before the conference. Now, that will be after this report. After going through 19 other committee reports, it was time for the National Conference to consider the last committee report, that of the Committee on Devolution of Power. After the co-chairmen of the committee gave a summary of the report, it was time for delegates to consider it.
We can consider increasing derivation to 95%. I would like to propose that it is done on the basis of what is onshore in the states affected. The oil producing areas certainly have raised a number of issues concerning environmental degeneration, a number of other factors that are affecting their areas. But if we were to go and, as it were, give all that they require, although we are very sympathetic, then the rest of Nigeria, some states may even collapse. And everybody now will be migrating to the Niger Delta. It's not healthy for the nation.
With the way some delegates spoke on the issues contained in the report of the committee, it appeared plenary on Tuesday would be confrontational. But to show that decisions may be taken differently, ballot boxes were set up. More delegates were allowed to speak on the report, then a short break was declared. The time allowed delegates to speak together before the expected vote.
We are here to do give and take. And you notice in my speech I said those who want status quo should be careful, because we are running towards 2015 election. If you want status quo and you are not ready to do give and take, then we will deal with them when we get to 2015 election, because we are watching each other.
As the chairman returned for the decisive moment, one of the delegates raised a motion saying leaders of the 6 geopolitical zones had been meeting to reach a consensus on the report of the committee.
I've been meeting over derivation and other things. We've done a great job so far. We're just about concluded. We were sitting from 9 p.m. till 1:30 this morning on this. And we've come pretty far reaching some agreement that we all can live with. So may I request you, Mr. Chairman, and in the indulgence of our delegates, to leave us to complete this and report back to you tomorrow with some consensus we've reached.
With this unanimous decision taken, the conference adjourned for the day. The next day, delegates arrived at plenary expecting a calm and rancor-free day. The leaders of the zone, who had met to discuss contentious issues on the recommendations of the committee, were expected to present their agreement. But it appeared they were yet to reach a consensus, so the conference decided to commence considering the modalities for the implementation of the final report of the conference.
We have been selected by Mr. President, by governors and various interests. But if we take what we have done here to the people, for them to affix their imprimatur to it, then everything we have done here, even though we are not elected, would have been ratified by the people, and therefore the problem of illegitimacy is cured.
Submit to the National Assembly, it is just all effort wasted. So I suggest that by the principle of implied mandate, if Mr. President goes over the head of the National Assembly and in the national broadcast and asks for a referendum, his actions will be validated because of the fact that he will be popular. Thank you.
While this was ongoing, the zonal leaders walked in. The spokesman of the group was invited to present their proposal.
This group adopted a position and to recommend to the plenary not less than 18% as the derivation formula for 5% revenue allocation to be made to solid minerals development. We know that we've been over-relying on the oil, which is a depleting asset, and that the time has come to pay even more attention to other resources that this country has in abundance and is fairly well spread.
He also added this proposal.
We have recommended a new fund to be established, which we call Fund for Stabilization, Rehabilitation and Reconstruction. 5% of revenue to be allocated to that, principally for the Northeast, of which that about 50%, Northwest and North Central. These recommendations, if endorsed, will be reflected in the Revenue Allocation Act.
The House adjourned on this note, but it was clear delegates were not pleased with the options before them.
You're not God, I'm not God. Don't threaten anyone. Don't threaten anyone.
For the third day in a row, delegates gathered in plenary hoping that a resolution had been reached on the contentious issues of revenue sharing formula and the derivation principle. A break of 1 hour was announced. It allowed some delegates to speak candidly to each other. When the conference resumed, some other amendments were taken as the House waited for the committee to return with an agreement. When they eventually came in, it was obvious all was not resolved.
This evening, we have not reached an agreement. Therefore, any report submitted to you has no support from us. Thank you very much.
This led to another break in proceeding. Eventually, the chairman made this announcement.
I'll be meeting with the 50 wise man, committee chairman, and their deputies, 11 o'clock here. And the committees should proceed with their meeting.
Once again, the House was forced to adjourn. Some of the delegates spoke on the development.
It's a national fund, but some people are proposing that it should be exclusively for Northeast, Northwest, and North Central as intervention, while there's a counter proposal that the fund should be a pool which should be for Northeast, North and Northwest, but as well as other areas that need such intervention. So that's the only bone of contention, and I'm sure that can be resolved by tomorrow.
We have seen this insurgency as a national problem. Boko Haram is a national issue, so the solution should also be national. So that's the issue here.
It's not clear if these issues will be resolved by Monday or if this will be the end of the road for the conference. So how will you describe that? Well, let me allow you to contemplate that a little longer. Now, for our chat with a female delegate. I would like to start with the conference so far. How would you say it has gone? Let's take it generally. How would you say the conference has been going?
So far, so good, but we have not finished yet. We are on the last committee on devolution of power.
Okay, but how has the process been? How would you say the process has been?
It's been wonderful. Nigerians were talking, we are reaching across each other, we are talking with each other, and we are making agreements that will move the country forward. So it's been good.
Okay, now this week has been particularly very, how do I put it? I think it's been a landmark one. We've spent almost 4 days on one report.
Committee report.
The committee on devolution of power.
Yes.
But before I go to devolution of power, in between all that, the issue of the Land Use Act was brought up and resolved by committee. How did you find that compromise position?
It was good for the compromise to come up because each side had strong arguments on where the Land Use Act should remain in the Constitution. Those who want the Land Use Act to remain in the Constitution have proffered their arguments, and those who want it removed also have proffered their arguments. And at the end of the day, a compromise was reached, and I was a member of the Land Use Land Use Committee.
Yeah.
It's called Land Use Tenure and National Boundary. We had a lot of discussion, and the committee recommendation was for it to be removed from the Constitution and be made an act of the National Assembly so that it can easily be amended. But the plenary rejected that, and then after consensus and an agreement was reached, which was accepted by the entire plenary, that it remains in the Constitution, but it can be amended to suit whatever circumstances arise.
Okay, but a lot of people, the feeling I got was that, because I know even I, in the National Assembly, a lot of appeal and lobbying has been done to see that something can be done to the Land Use Act, because a lot of people feel it's holding development of even the financial sector, the small businesses is holding them down. That if it was removed and it was made possible for landowners to be able to use their land as collateral, it could help. What do you see as...
The whole argument is to make land become capital in the hands of the owners of the land. And those opposed to its being removed, those who want it removed from the Constitution feel that the land is not accessible to the common man. But if it is amended in the Constitution, as it is now, if you go into the Land Use Act, because it is an act itself, and then you amend it, the process of removing it from the Constitution is the same thing as the process of amending it while it is in the Constitution. So you see both sides are winners in this argument. And I believe you can still use the land as capital to get mortgages. It's just that I only advise the banks to be more liberal, because the stringent condition of collateral is really what is holding the landowners back, not really the Land Use Act, because it has been used as collateral over and over and over again. And remember, the generality of the people who are, particularly from my own part of the country, are not even literate enough to know that they can use this land. So what we need to do is really to sensitize them that yes, you can use your land as collateral, and the banks should be liberal in terms of mortgages. And
then there was this part in the compromise position that had to do with government paying compensation or paying the actual price of a land if they want to.
Yes, at the committee level, the argument is that the government just take the land and gives you what they want. But actually, that is not even correct, because compensation are paid, and negotiations, the landowner is always involved in payment. But the argument is that the compensation paid is not adequate. So we put it that it should be the commercial value of the land that the government will pay the owner. And it is accepted by the plenary. So if the federal government or the state government wants to take land from you, for example, and then you go and say this is the commercial value of the land, and the government will also bring their own. It's a negotiation now. That is what we are recommending. It should be a negotiation between the landowner and the government, instead of just taking it and then paying you anything they want. So that is the improvement we have made